So from the time, like a lot of people that listen to this, their kids are going to be prepubescent. Some of them are just starting. Some of them are a little further along, maybe closer to the junior hockey age. And so I want to just talk a little bit about the arc. And I know you know a lot about this already as well. So you can add if there's anything to add. Kind of what it looks like going from, let's say you're like seriously coming right out of the chute, you can walk until you're up to specialization age, late high school and into your early 20s when it starts to become like athlete centric and hyper focusing on specific things about your sport. And so the first is, we talk about this all the time with like long-term athletic development planning, is like the play-based, age-appropriate, common sense types of things. So one awesome example I had is I was upstairs. I work out in the gym upstairs here quite a bit, and I can see down into the soccer fields. So I was here on one of the weekends in the morning, and I was working out, and I could see down into the soccer field, and there's these little kids, man. And it's like, it's so fun to watch little kids, and it can also be a pain in the ass to watch little kids, but it's so fun to watch them just like figuring it out. So they're playing soccer, right? And it's the easiest game ever to play. All kids,
per kid.
All kids
you kick a ball and you're on.
Like they just intuitively know to kick. Right, I'm sure you've seen this like with your grandbabies. They're running around just kicking stuff and smacking things and whatever. And so these kids they're like 4, 5, 6, 7 ish. Okay, they got their shin guards on, soccer shin guard. They're too big for their freaking legs. Like they go up above their knees. They got their little pretend spikes on and their little soccer outfit, and they're just chugging around. And I'm watching, and the coaches are just allowing the kids to run around and kick the ball around, and the coaches are kind of floating, trying to just like poke it away from them, right? And so I'm watching, and I'm thinking it's so funny that how many parents would like have a problem with that. You know, they watch this practice, let's say, and it's like, whoa, where are the drills? Like, where's the structure? Like, why aren't they lining up? Why don't you have enough people out there why is it just chaos? And it's like, the kids want to play, man. Like, they want to just piss around. Right? And like, you can organize a game. Like, you can't even really do competitive games with them yet. Like, they don't even know how to stand up, right? They don't know how to stand on one leg, and they can barely jump. They can barely move on one foot, you know? And so if you talk about strength training, that's all part of that. That's part of strength training. They're learning to balance on one foot and move and kick and roll and fall down and get up and this kind of stuff. So it was cool to watch. Like, upstairs, I'm just watching it be fun, and it was mayhem. It was absolute chaos. There was like enough adults that it was contained, but they were just letting them run around, like run wild, kick the ball, kick it into the net, take the ball out, run the other way, fall down, get up, trip over the ball, and all this stuff. And that's actually perfectly age appropriate for what they need. And that's kind of where it starts, whether it's a sport or not, right? And I remember you used to say this with little Charlie. Like, he would come in when he was 4. You were telling the story today about you had to get him a kettlebell. When he was little, because you had whatever. He was in
diapers.
Yeah, what was in the garage? Like, what was the story?
So Dalton, that works with us now.
Yeah.
So his family lived right kitty corner to us, and they didn't have, like, they had 4 kids or 5 kids all playing travel sports and stuff, and I loved their family, right? Charlie was just like in diapers, and Charlie was a little beauty. He'd come with me everywhere, right? And he was just saying, he goes, I remember being like 8 years old, hanging out with them when they were 15 and 18 years old, and we were buddies, right? So anyways, I told them, because they wanted to come to my gym, and I can't just pick them up and go because I was at early in the morning, come back late and all that stuff. So I said, listen, I'll make a deal with you guys. If you guys get up at 5:30 or 6 o'clock in the morning for like this period of time, and you meet me on my concrete slab at my house, I'll have equipment there. And if you get up, I will be there ready to go, and I'll work you guys out. So like, cool. So Charlie, with limited words, said, I want to work out too. If he's speaking in diapers, I don't know why he was in diapers, but he was a baby in diapers or rubber boots, whatever it was. He was like very, very, very young, barely can speak. So the kids came. He's a little baby, so I wasn't going to wake him up for 6 o'clock in the morning workout. You
lunatic.
Right? Yeah, you freaking, yeah, you nut. So the kids came, and they were out there, and I was getting them kind of warmed up, and I had kettlebells and a few different things. And then he came out on the sliding door, and he was crying, and you said I could work out. So then, okay, yeah, come on there, diaper boy. So he was coming on there, but he was mad. So anyways, I said, I'll get you a kettlebell, or I'll get you some weights. And then I found like a smallest kettlebell, Like it was at the gym. It was a door stopper at one time, and that's how he started working out. But he was so mad at me. So like he really, guys, is like, so he was less than 3, more than 2 years old, and it was like, I wasn't going to say no, you're not allowed to exercise, son. It was like the best thing. He wasn't committed, by the way.
Right.
Like
you do it for a few minutes.
yeah,
move to the
some
next
days
thing.
he just shit his pants and lay in his crib, and other days he want to come out or whatever. But it's like he wasn't committed to working out. He was just like he wanted
Did
to.
you hear that, Charlie, or no? Yeah.
And then, but it was good for him. He tried.
Right, and that's exactly how it starts and where it starts. But people don't necessarily think of that as like strength training.
The best thing though, now that I remember all this stuff, is when he would work out, he would see me breathe, or he'd see the boys. I'd say like on your exhales, like on your concentrics or whatever, eccentrics, you breathe in and you breathe out. So it's like if you're pushing like, so he would have like this kettlebell, and we would do like Turkish sit-ups. So that's a sit-up, feet up, and you're pushing up with the kettlebell, and he'd have the face like, he'd do a swing, but it's like there's no weight, man. but so just a side note of that, like I know it sounds funny and all the stuff, and you go whatever, but like it's so funny when you're around role models, when you're around new things, or you imitate, right? So like in his mind, he was going to be a pro hockey player here at 2 years old, and you work out, and these guys are pushing, and when they push, they're like, so it's like your environment, like, see what I mean? Like, it's like your environment is like, you're going to be who you're like. So he actually wanted to imitate those guys, right? So like, that's another good thing is you're around good people, you're around people that are doing things, and you put them in an environment where they're trying different things and growing in different ways, and it's all good, right?
Yeah, and another way of thinking about it too is I was kind of saying this yesterday, we were talking to some parents, how you think of things as an adult. Like if you think about like strength training as a grown-up or training as a grown-up, it's like, okay, I'm going to go to the gym, I'm going to do 3 sets of this and 4 sets of this and this many reps and whatever. And that's not how a kid would think about doing it. So they would think about, I'm going to go run around and I'm going to try to lift this thing, and then I'm going to try to push that, and then I'm going to try to pull on this, and then I'm going to roll over, and then I'm going to crawl there. And yeah, exactly. Right. And so that's kind of how it progresses. So it turns from, in the way that Andy was laying it out in the podcast, not you, Andy, different Andy. Yeah, this Andy.
A lot of Andys out there.
Yeah, a lot of Andys. So he says, you go from that play thing, and then you start to turn it into play based with a little bit of like you can add some competitiveness to it, and turn it into like a competitive game, like to try to make them go as fast as they can, or as many as they can, or whatever. So now you're adding a layer of complexity to the task that they have to do, stringing multiple things together. You got to jump, and then you got to run, and then you got to roll over, like that kind of stuff. So now you're layering complexity on the training. Now you're stringing together movements. Now it's not just one thing, it's multiple things. And now there's like a goal at the end of it. I'm trying to get to this point. So we went from kind of chaotic, play-based, mess around, like feel things out in a safe environment, to do it with a purpose, multiple movements, with some level of competitiveness to it. And that will take you right up until basically that puberty age, right? And then from that point, that's when now you start to say, okay, we want to kind of level this up and turn this into more structured, goal-oriented, with purpose training in the gym. So now it's like, instead of it being just fun and just fun plus competitiveness, now it's like, okay, maybe it's not so fun because you're old enough to understand delayed gratification, sacrifice for something better later, and those types of concepts.
Or you just need to now.
Yeah, right.
Like for a sport, you need to.
And they can grasp what that means. They are old enough to see, okay, like this might not be my favorite thing to do necessarily, but I know that doing this will help me. They're old enough to understand that kind of concept. So now you can start to do actual, like, in the gym focused specific movement patterns to lay like good foundations that will later apply to sport. And then from there you go to apply to sport. And now I'm like specializing, and that brings you kind of to that late high school kind of age, right? So with our guys that are grade 11, 12, that's what we're kind of starting to do now. It's like their off-season program, though there's a lot of foundation stuff still at the beginning. Towards the end, it's starting to look very specific for hockey purposes. I was giving them the example of like interval training. If you do, if you're a 100-meter sprinter, for example, and you're gonna run it in as a younger person, 12 seconds. If you're amazing at a little bit older, it's 10 seconds or a little more than that. If you're an Olympian, but let's say it's 12 seconds. Well, your training interval will look a lot like 12 seconds. If you run 200 meters, it'd be whatever it is, double that, right? If you play hockey, most of the intervals you're going to do going as hard as possible are going to be no longer than like 7 seconds, right? That's what they found in the sport of hockey. So if you're doing very, very intense interval training specific for hockey purposes, then 7 seconds is a good length of time to go as hard as you can go. And so that's where the specificity will start to come in later down the road towards the end of that arc. And then that will carry you through your time as an athlete, right? Where you're specifically training for sport. And then when you're done, it almost reverses itself, right? Like I said earlier, it goes the opposite way. You go back to more basics, foundations, well-rounded, that type of stuff, more general. And so I think that's kind of like how that progression should look. So if you have a kid that's 8, if you have a kid that's 12, like I had a dad message me the other day about off-season training, and I think his kid's like is 12, I think 11. It's like, hey, are you gonna have any training for the off-season? It's like, okay, there's gonna need to be a conversation there about what does training look like, and do you expect him to do the training that the 16-year-olds are doing? Because that's not actually appropriate. If your kid is younger than that, what I just said should give a little bit of framework of what might be appropriate for that age. So hopefully that is like somewhat helpful.